All right, we have here the Panasonic PTZ camera controller. It's the same controller that is in Studio 1's control room as well as Studio 2 control room. And we are currently in Studio 2, the control room. And just gonna go over the layout here and jump into some more of the specifics about the panel. And up here in the top left section, we have our color correction and our black and white balance. And you can also see that the power is on. We have lights lit up. So the power switch is in the back left if you do come in here and it is off. And what I tell people in the class is to stick to that 5600 Kelvin. That's what the soft LED lights in Studio 1 and 2 come in at about that daylight color. You do also have the ability to adjust to a specific color temperature, which I'll show you in a second. So we don't really have to mess around with much here. I mean, you can jump in and really fine tune your settings. But to start here, we have an A and a B button, which you can store information to. This requires you to use a white card and to store a setting to that A and B. And so if you press the button and you're on the A setting, it's just going to light up with this amber color. Same with B, it's going to light up with this amber color. If you press and hold it, then it'll turn green, and that's actually the second setting. So you can see this says A/3200K. So our white balance is now set to 3200 Kelvin. If we hold down the B button, it'll light up green, and that means that our white balance is set to 5600 Kelvin. And then we have our auto white balance there, and if it's lit up with that amber color, if we press and hold it, then we can actually come in. You can see that this color temperature right here is 4660 Kelvin, and we actually can use this knob now to fine tune this number to whatever we want. So that is an option. Usually my two options I would go to if I was coming into the studio would be to either press and hold the B button so I get that 5600 Kelvin, which should match my daylight lighting in the studio, or if something is looking a little off, then I can come in here and I can adjust the color temperature. Let's say I want it to be 5000, then I would turn this knob all the way. It takes a little bit to get there, but all the way up to 5000 Kelvin. So those are those three buttons. Shutter on, you see here the shutter, just the settings there. So if you want to leave your shutter on, you can then adjust it. You cannot go lower than 60, but you can go up to 10,000. So if you want to adjust the shutter, then you can turn the shutter on and adjust it with this knob there. And then that's really the only thing that we should be messing around with there, as far as setting your white balance and your shutter. And then you can see here we have gain, which is your white balance, your red and blue you can adjust there, and you also have pedestal. So on a Panasonic PTZ controller, they call it pedestal, which actually is your black balance. And so you have your brights and your darks, your whites and your blacks, your gain or your pedestal. So you have a red balance. You can see it's going positive or negative. And you also have blue. So if you want to make adjustments to the red or the blue balance on your white balance, then you can make those. If you don't, make sure they're just zeroed out. I already see here when I turn this on, it went to +2 and +4 for red and blue. So this is for my pedestal gain, or my pedestal level. So this is your black balance. So I'm going to put these at 0. I don't need to mess with those. And then I have my master pedestal, or my master black balance. So if you want to crush some of those blacks a little bit more and you want to make it a little bit darker in the space, or let's see that you see a little bit of the curtain but you don't want to, so you can bring down that black balance just a bit. You can mess with that with the overall black balance. You don't have to adjust these. So those are the settings there on your overall color balance, and then you have adjustments for your gain or your pedestal, which are your white and your black. And then each panel has an enable. So you want to make sure that this enable is selected there, or you won't be able to make any adjustments on this panel. Jumping down here, we're getting to some more things that are probably a little bit more obvious if you've taken a camera class at Austin Public or just in general, but we have our iris. So this is the amount of light that we're allowing into the lens. So we see it. Let's see, I'm on auto right now. So you can see it changing here. I can see iris, zoom, and focus here, and I can see that I'm in camera 1. And so you can see that my f-stop is changing there. So, all the way to close, which usually is f11, and then all the way open right now is f4.1. So that's your iris. You can do an auto iris if you want to. So totally up to you. And that's usually based on the waveform monitor that you see in the equipment or the control room for Studio 1 and 2. You can see those exposure levels. You can also just eyeball it and see what looks good on the monitor. But those are usually in the studios your two options, either just kind of going by what you see or looking at the waveform monitor and seeing your exposure levels. All right, so your iris is there. You have your zoom here. So this is a rocker. You can go more wide or more telephoto. So you can see this happening up here where you are on between wide telephoto. So there's no actual numbers associated with that, at least based on this screen. So this is variable. The harder you push, the faster you will zoom. The lighter you push, the slower you'll zoom. But you also have a speed adjustment here. So I can go from high, which now I'm going to be zooming in really fast, zooming out really fast, or you can make a really slow adjustment. And now even when I'm pressing really hard, all the way down, you can see that this is barely moving. So it's almost not moving at all. So now, okay, so I adjusted a little bit more, but you can see that I'm moving really slow, and I'm fully pressed down on this rocker. So personal, choice based on what you're trying to go for. If you want a really fast zoom, then you can make this speed a little higher. But if you wanted to control, be a little bit more controlled, then you can adjust this speed here. All right. We also have zoom on the rocker that is on. It might be hard to see in this video, but on the back side of this joystick, there is also a rocker. And this speed of this rocker, as you can see, it's moving back and forth here, is also determined by this dial, this speed here. This is also a touchscreen. So if you want this rocker here on the joystick, which is moving your cameras, panning left and right, tilting up and down, if you want this rocker to be something else, you can actually have it, you can change it here to be your focus. And you can either go between zoom or focus. And then you can actually enable it or disable this mode, and where it says rocker. So if you want this rocker here to be focus, then you can have it be that as well. Your focus settings are down here. We'll get there in a second. But I think more commonly it's used as a zoom. So when you're moving around, you can zoom in and out. So you can leave that at zoom, but it's just good to double check that if you are wanting this to be zoom. Just make sure that this says it's enabled and that it's zoom is selected there. So for focus, we have our dial here for focus. We also have a speed adjustment for that. So how quickly you want this dial to, this knob here to focus up. So you can go really slow, or you can be really fast if you want to do like a fast rack focus. We have an autofocus, which usually is pretty good if your lighting is such in the studio that you're having a hard time focusing between your subject and say the curtain or a green screen or the wall, whatever your backdrop may be. Then I definitely would recommend getting autofocus and focusing on your subject. But typically I like to be an auto, just because it'll focus on your subject as they're moving around, and that's something that I want the controller to take control of versus me having to pay attention to it all the time. But if you ever see that you're focusing on the back wall when you don't want to be, then get out of focus, autofocus, and then adjust there. This is a one-touch autofocus. So let's say you are in manual. So I'm out of auto. I'm doing this adjustment based on what I see on the screen. I can press this and it will then focus up on whatever is in the forefront of the shot. It'll focus up quickly, but it'll stay in manual. So that's a good, basically it's a way to autofocus quickly but stay in manual. So one touch autofocus. Again, this is your speed. This enable here is controlling this entire section. So you want to make sure that's lit up or you will not be able to control iris, zoom, or focus. This section here is really basic. We are in Studio 2, so there are 3 cameras in here, camera 1, 2, and 3. When we're in Studio 1, this will literally just be 2 cameras, which in there it might be, I think it's actually 4 and 5 because there's 5 cameras total between this Studio 2, and Studio 1, as far as PTZ cameras are concerned. So there's really not anything that you're doing in this section. We want to make sure that we stay in camera group 1 and that you see the green lit above camera 1, 2, and 3. And as I click these, you can see that my camera is changing up here. So these are now the settings for camera 1. These are now the settings for camera 2. These are the settings for camera 3. So that's really all you're doing here is just changing your camera. All right, and then this talked a little bit about already, but this is the joystick. So we have the ability to tilt up, tilt down, pan left, pan right. We have the rocker, which is set to zoom right now. So that is for moving your camera around. Just the camera head. We're not moving the pedestal or the dolly around, right? That's manually moved in the studio, but we're moving the actual camera head left and right, up and down. And then that has a speed as well. So if you want the joystick to move really quickly with your adjustments, obviously this is variable as well. The more over you go, the far over you go, the faster. This is a very slight adjustment, but you also have the ability to adjust that speed here. And then this is the enable. When it's actually an amber color, it allows you to control the board. Not sure why it lights up green when none of the others do, but that's the functionality, is when it's lit up this amber color, it works. All right, and then up here you can see I'd already sort of messed around with this as far as color temperature, but this is your gain setting. So gain is a digital enhancement of the brightness of your shot. So we are in a studio controlled environment with all of the lighting that we have. We do not want to mess with gain. So you want to make sure that's at 0. If you start getting up there into the 9 to 12 range, you're going to see some grain show up in your shot, and you do not want that. You will only make that mistake once. So make sure that this is zeroed out. And then again, shutter speed, I showed, that's when shutter is enabled here. We have the ability to adjust shutter. We are in scene 1 right now. So you have the ability to store different scenes. So don't really get into that much in the class. So I would just say make sure that you're in scene 1, making adjustments from there. And then as far as this section goes, we're not really too concerned a lot with it, at least with the basics. I'll do another video that shows how to do the memory store and the tracing memory store. But you have the ability to go into the paint function, which if you click on white balance, you can actually see your white balance settings a little bit better than you could in this camera section here. When we start to get into function and maintenance, that's more setting up the board. We ask that you don't really go into those sections, but paint is something that you could go to if you really want to see more of your pedestal settings. There's gain settings, there's white balance. So I don't really ever go in these. It's unless maybe I really want to see where my white balance setting is, because normally I don't see that here. The only time this shows up as your color temperature is if you press and hold the auto white balance or the variable to green, and then this shows up here and you can actually now adjust it. the only other time that you can see, so if you're not using that, say you're on B, you can go into paint and see that you're on auto white balance B, but even then it doesn't show my color temperature. So if I press and hold this to get to 5600, now it shows I'm at 5600. So that might be the only reason, but you want to make sure that none of these, and this might be hard to see with the joystick, but you want to make sure that none of these are lit up, or you won't be able to see that main camera menu. So none of these are lit up. I'm seeing the settings for my cameras, right? I can see my iris, my zoom, my focus, my gain, red and blue, my pedestal, black, red, and blue, my master pedestal. So I can go and adjust that to 0. I can see my gain, my shutter speed, my scene, and then color temperature if I'm in that variable setting. So I cannot see this if I have one of these lit up. If I go into memory, if I go into maintenance, function, paint, I can't see this. So you want to make sure that none of these, sorry if you can see this on the screen, that none of these are lit up. So I'm going to take paint off, and now I'm back in that home, sort of that home scene where I can see all of my settings for that camera. We're in user 2, so I would just say make sure that user 2 is lit up, and that's about it for this tutorial. I'll jump back in and talk a little bit about the memory storage and the tracing storage.